And with the 8th and final race in this year's Shell Oil's Transatlantic Trophy, Britain leads by 284 points to 178, so the match, I'm afraid, is already won and lost. But there's £5,000 at stake for the top individual points scorer, and that could be any one of three guys. Kevin Schwantz, the American, on 72 points, Roger Burnett on 65, and Fred McKell, the US captain, on 64. Let's go live now to the commentary box with the riders already on their warm-up lap.
The team contest then decided, in fact it really was decided yesterday to be truthful, but the Americans, Fred Merkel and Kevin Schwantz, and the riders out on the circuit looking at a very wet track. And there you can see how damp conditions are, the rain lashing on the lens of our camera. And Ron Haslam, who had an outing on Roger Marshall's spare machine with the Formula One motor in, has abandoned that in favour of the more basic roadster machine because he believes that will handle better in these wet conditions. Well, Ron has had a third and a fourth in the rain. Straight after this race, Haslam rushes to catch a plane down to London, then off to Nice and the Paul Ricard circuit to go testing his Grand Prix machine. So Haslam will be in a hurry both on and off the racetrack. And we look forward to see this man, Fred Merkel, and the man who's coming through now, Kevin Schwantz, showing just what they can do on a wet track.
Now we've had a quick shower of rain which has soaked the circuit, but now the sun has come out and the rain seems to have eased off, so it's absolutely anybody's guess about what tyres are going to be perfect for these conditions. At the moment it really has to be erring on the full wet side, but if the sun stays out and it doesn't rain again, things could be drying up marginally. It's really anybody's guess.
Well, of course, only a 7-lap race, Peter, so I think there's not a lot of chance of the track drying out enough to make that much difference, would you say?
Well, it's difficult. These bikes are going to abuse wet weather tyres if they get at all hot, and how much rain came down in that shower is questionable. The track was quite dry earlier on, and then it was a brief shower. So you can see there's water on the surface, but there's plenty of tarmac showing through.
So the normal grid lineup as before on the front row of the grid. Closest to us, Paul Idden. Furthest away from us, Kenny Irons, and both of these young men have done particularly well in the Transatlantic Challenge for Britain. And Kevin Schwantz is there, and so too is Fred Merkel for Britain, and sandwiched in the middle of the 5-man lineup, Steve Parrish with the Loctite Yamaha. The men we have to watch for, of course, Kevin Schwantz, bike number 34, Roger Burnett, the British boy, on the Rothmans Honda bike number 9, and Fred Merkel, bike number 1. They're the three men who can get to the £5,000 for the overall top scorer. It's a 7-lap race once again. This the final round of the Shell Oil's Transatlantic Challenge for 1986. The engine roar, they creep forward, they're looking at the traffic light start, and away they go. And Kenny Irons and Fred Merkel, bikes numbers 8 and 1, lead the charge. And we're going to see the view from Kevin Schwantz's camera bike. There is Kevin Schwantz behind, this is Roger Burnett behind Fred Merkel. Roger Burnett's Honda with the camera bike, and there is Merkel, there is Ken Irons. So Merkel leads, Ken Irons is second, Roger Burnett third, and Burnett goes through on the inside. You can see that as they go down Craner curves. And so Roger Burnett in with a fighting chance to grab overall victory. It's going to be a close sport thing. I was looking to see where Kevin Schwantz was.
I think Schwantz just moved up into 4th place there, coming from a bitty slow start, but it's Merkel leads from Burnett, Irons, Schwantz, yes, up into 4th and already challenging Irons for 3rd.
So Merkel, the race leader, and a bit of bunching there, desperate stuff, and bikes sliding, and really it's not a place for the faint-hearted out there. Merkel, the race leader, Roger Burnett, number 9. Then is Kevin Schwantz up into 3rd place. Kenny Irons pushed back. Steve Parrish. There was the distinctive livery of the red and white Marlboro Yamaha ridden by Rob McElnay. Merkel peels off for the S's. Merkel the leader, Roger Burnett in 2nd place. Kevin Schwantz is 3rd, then Kenny Irons, then Steve Parrish. Then it was Chris Martin well up again. Well, Chris Martin's had an eventful Transatlantic challenge. Look at the lead, though. Merkel has already opened on this opening lap. The pack winding their way round the Melbourne hairpin. It's a long sweeping hairpin, but there seems to be only one basic racing line on that corner. And here comes the race leader, the American captain, 23-year-old Californian, Fred Merkel. Merkel, the race leader. Roger Burnett in second place. And Merkel banking that bike over quite remarkably through Hollywood, down into Craner Curve. And Merkel is setting a very, very hard pace indeed. 3 seconds the gap at the end of that lap.
Yes, and the one British thing about Merkel's lead here is that he's on Dunlop tyres. The British tyres have absolutely dominated this event in very, very difficult conditions. And the first 3 bikes, that's Merkel, Burnett and Schwantz, all on Dunlops at the moment.
Fred Merkel on the American Honda machine, not his #1 bike. He's left that behind in the United States, but still a very competitive motorcycle nonetheless. Merkel in front. At the moment, Merkel on 64. If he gets 15 here, that would put him on 79. And Merkel is destroying the opposition. And Merkel doing close on, I would say, 140 miles an hour along that back straight, Peter.
Yes, it's a short straight now, but it's still possible for them to get up to 140. And we watch Schwantz closing on Burnett. They're now slow to about 40 miles an hour, 30, 40 miles an hour through there, accelerating up through the gears, still hitting about 100 miles an hour in that short straight before braking for a very, very tight right-hand hairpin. Burnett now screws on the power, the back tyre spins as they accelerate, going up to 70, 90 miles an hour, probably up the hill, before braking very, very hard again for the 30 or 40 miles an hour around this tight hairpin. Then another burst of speed. Now the Donington Park circuit has been changed a great deal. It's no longer all sweeping curves, and it's a lot of braking and acceleration.
Merkel, the race leader. Roger Burnett in second place. Peeling hard right all the way through Redgate and then Hollywood, and then the downhill plunge to Craner Curve.
Yes, and this sweep, they're sweeping across the soaking wet tarmac now, and still doing about 110, 120 miles an hour as they drop down the hill.
Into the old hairpin. Kevin Schwantz in third place, and Keith Ewan on the STC Suzuki into the pits, and so too is John Ashby, one of the Americans. So each team loses a rider. There is Roger Burnett out on the racetrack, and this is what it looks like on Roger Burnett's Rodman's Honda machine, charging through the spray and the rain into McLean's, on towards Coppice, and then the charge down the back straight underneath the Dunlop Bridge, changing down through the gearbox and into the S's.
Yes, they're up now, fastest part of the circuit, as we were saying, about 140 miles an hour before hitting the brakes really hard. And Ron Haslam coming into our picture at the back there. That's number 9, Burnett, leading Schwantz, but Haslam on the bottom standard road bike, carving his way through the field.
And here is Ron Haslam, and that will be a sight to gladden the hearts of thousands of his fans here at Donington Park, and thousands more watching it at home on television. Ron Haslam, one of the finest riders in the sport, and one of the most popular with the British enthusiasts. Haslam in 4th place. This is when that roaster machine loses or is less competitive, and Kevin Schwantz goes up into 2nd place, and there it is. That's the gap between Roger Burnett and Kevin Schwantz. And Schwantz powers on, pulling away a little bit from Burnett on the Suzuki. Schwantz there in 2nd place, Roger Burnett in 3rd spot. The gap between Merkel and this battle for second place now over 10 seconds. And Burnett will miss out on the overall first place unless he can get ahead of Schwantz and Merkel. But of course, Roger took a tumble in race 7, and he certainly won't want to do anything foolish in this particular race. Better to finish the race and lose a little bit of prize money.
And here's another example, as we're talking about racing improving the reed. That's the old VF 750 Honda, but much modified with the Formula 1 engine. Ron Haslam is now gaining on this bike with the standard road bike that has replaced it in this year's Honda lineup. So that's the standard new machine gaining on the old racer.
And here comes Ron Haslam, and I can assure you that Roger Burnett will be somewhat embarrassed if Ron Haslam gets past him. Haslam, he knows his way around the Donington Park circuit. He is a very, very talented rider, and Roger Burnett looks over his shoulder, and Haslam goes past, but they're both sprinting down for the hairpin. But Haslam has the better line. He's going to hold off Burnett and move through into third place. And there you see the view from Burnett's machine. Once again, the water being thrown up off the lens of the camera. There is Burnett behind Ron Haslam.
See Haslam accelerate away from Burnett coming out of the corner there. That wasn't because the bike has more power, it certainly hasn't, but it was Haslam's beautifully smooth riding style, making use of the smooth power delivery of this production machine to get the power on early and pull away from the corner.
Ron Haslam then in third place in pursuit of Kevin Schwantz, and the same Ron Haslam will be rushing away to go testing on the Elf Grand Prix bike before returning to race in Britain next weekend at Cadwell Park against Burnett and Marshall.
Now the incredible thing to consider is that here's Schwantz on what has won a bike that's won many of these races here this weekend, and Haslam seems, if anything, to be closing on him.
Well, Ron Haslam has been pleased with his performance on the road, basic road bike, and what a turn it would be for the books if he could get ahead of Kevin Schwantz. Schwantz there in second place. There's the gap between Kevin Schwantz in second place and Ron Haslam in third position. Roger Burnett dropping back in fourth place, obviously intent just on finishing, and that means that if they finish as they are, that Kevin Schwantz will take the £5,000 for the best point scorer. But Ron Haslam has got him in his sights, and Haslam is chasing. 29 years of age from Langley Mill in Nottinghamshire, just up the road. His wife Anne and little boy Leon here at the circuit to watch Daddy in action, and what a combined performance Haslam has put up all over the weekend. You know, what a pity, perhaps he didn't have a more competitive machine at the start of it all, Peter.
Yes, and of course we've talked a lot about the speed of his road bike and the fact that it doesn't have the power of the other machines. There are other problems too. It can't accept the wide wheels for the really good tyres, and it doesn't have the same suspension as the racing bikes, because it has suspension that's designed to cope with the big bumps and everyday riding, and of course that makes life a lot more difficult for Ron.
Kevin Schwantz, and it looks as though Schwantz is hanging onto this lead 3.6 seconds, and that's asking an awful lot for anyone to do, even Ron Haslam.
Yes, presumably Schwantz has got the message from his pit that Ron was closing rapidly and has now opened up the throttle of the Yoshimura Suzuki and using its power to keep his advantage.
There is Ron Haslam, he's in third place at the moment. Fred Merkel still out in front. Kevin Schwantz in second place. Kevin Schwantz would get 84 points if Schwantz hangs on to second place. Haslam goes through. Here is Roger Burnett. He's had a magnificent weekend. He must be very pleased with himself, and so too. And there is the view from Roger Burnett's machine, changing down through the gearbox to peel over hard left to go through the S's on onto the new section of the Darlington Park circuit. And Burnett still trying very hard indeed. The race leader, Fred Merkel, about to start his last lap. Behind him, of course, Kevin Schwantz. Third at the moment is Ron Haslam. Fourth position, it is Roger Burnett, of course. And in fifth place is Michel Mercier. That's the French-Canadian. That's a good performance from him. In sixth spot is number 55, Paul Inn. And in seventh place is number 4, Rob McElnay, the British captain. But really, Merkel is having a remarkable performance. Merkel then on the way to victory, but he won't pick up the £5,000. That will go to Kevin Schwantz, who will have scored 84 points. Merkel will have scored 79. And they really have got the bulk of their scores from Schwantz and Merkel. What a pity, Peter, that the rest of the American team haven't quite matched up this pair.
Yes, it's an amazing thing, isn't it? The Americans produce these superstars and yet they don't have the strength in depth. And two men have proved themselves this weekend to be some of the best riders in the world, and yet they haven't got the fellow competitors to help them to an overall team victory. And you can see Schwantz, you can see Merkel there wiping his visor with the back of his glove just to keep the rain off it.
I think we must be fair to the Americans, though. This is a new track for them. All of them are coming to England for the very first time. It has been cold here at Donington. We've had snow. Here is Merkel on the way to victory in this final team race. Merkel and Schwantz have been the stars, and Merkel heads for another win for the Americans. The checkered flag goes out. There will be a wheelie. There goes Fred Merkel. He acknowledges the checkered flag, punches the air in delight. We wait to see the second and third people. Look at Merkel. Is he a happy little Californian? And a wheelie from Kevin Schwantz. And Schwantz, too, delighted with his performance, with good reason. Ron Haslam goes through in a big cheer from the supporters here. And here is Roger Burnett. And Burnett misses a gear. And there is Merkel. What a showman. He is happy, really pleased with himself. Well, Fred Merkel, the winner, Kevin Schwantz in second place. Going back to the American performance, Peter, I think people like Ruben McMurtry have been up there. Michel Mercier has done well. I think there have been enough impressive performances to show that next year things could be very different indeed.
Yes, you're dead right. They did learn this circuit in the most difficult conditions, and at various times each of them showed what they could possibly do with more practice. Yes, you're right. Next year they come back, they'll know what to expect. They'll know what lousy weather we can have at Easter, and they should be more prepared and more able to put on a solid team performance. And led with by men like this, we could be in for a beating.
Yes, and let's talk. We've talked a lot about Kevin Schwantz and Fred Merkel, quite rightly. They have been superstars. But let's talk about men like Kenny Irons from the British team and Roger Burnett. There we are, dual wheelies. What showmen these two characters are. But let's talk about the English people. Kenny Irons and Roger Burnett in particular have been good.
Yes, Roger Burnett has shown that he can win races this weekend on the 500 Honda and the 750. He can ride either machine, and obviously he's got the backing of Honda, and he's well on his way to progressing to be a Grand Prix star, and he'll ride in Grand Prix this year. What I'd really love to see is Ken Irons get the same sort of help from somebody so that he can make the same sort of logical progression.
Well, I think that would be nice to see. Merkel once again on the footrest of the Honda, still beside himself with delight and happiness. So the American team absolutely thrashed. And there goes Fred Merkel putting up the one finger. We're number one, says Fred Merkel. Well, he really has come over somewhat unknown, but they've emerged them with tremendous credit. The result then just confirmation of the result of this final race there. Fred Merkel, the winner of this 8th leg of the Shell Oils Transatlantic Challenge. Second, Kevin Schwantz. And third, well, the local boy, the local hero, Ron Haslam, on what is basically a production road-going Honda.